All right, welcome back to the show. At this time, we are joined by Travis Brown from the Eagle newspaper, where he covers the Texas A&M Aggies. Welcome to the show, Travis.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hey, man, we appreciate you taking some time and being with us, and we want to talk Texas A&M football. And I don't know anywhere better to start than the quarterback position and Kellen Mond. I believe, and I want to get your opinion on it, I believe that he is one of the more underrated and over-criticized players in the country. You're talking about a guy that put up 3,400 total offensive yards despite playing Georgia, despite playing Clemson, despite playing Alabama, Auburn, LSU, some of the top defenses in the country. He still put up some big numbers. So let's start right there. And Travis, I want to ask you, do you think that Kellen Mond is over criticized and underappreciated?
Um, yes and no. I think that he's a guy with a tremendous amount of talent and even some untapped potential. I think last season you can take it one way or the other of the fact that his offensive line gave him almost zero help, and did he running back situation, having Jay Corbin go out for the remainder of the season with a hamstring injury, and having freshman Isaiah Spiller have to completely carry the load that he wasn't really expected to carry, made most of the offense fall onto Kellen Mond's shoulders. And I think that in some instances he was able to handle that pressure. In some instances, maybe that pressure got a little bit too much for him. So I think that if he's able to come in here with Isaiah Spiller, another guy coming into second season, and making some improvements, and if they can make some improvements on the offensive line, he'll be able to actually settle into somewhat of a quarterback real quarterback season, and do kind of the offense that they want him to do, instead of just having to be the only guy really they can rely upon to move the chains and do whatever they can to make that happen. I don't think necessarily the offense ran 100% like Jimbo Fisher wanted it to last year, just because of what they had to do to move the chains and score points. So I think this will be a big season to see where Kellen Mond is, and what his future can be in football as well.
Now, you mentioned Isaiah Spiller, the freshman running back who almost rushed for 1,000 yards and had 1,149 total offensive yards last season. Really a fantastic season for the freshman, and I expected him to have a good season, but nothing like the load that he carried last year. And so, my question for you is this: the way he came on last year as a freshman, what should we expect out of him next season?
I mean, he's going to have a big year, because while they really replenished the cupboard with running backs via a few transfers and mostly recruiting, he's going to be the workhorse for them again next year, with Jay Corbin transferring to Florida State. So it's going to be another one of those situations where he's going to be called upon to probably go over and beyond his years in playing time, but he'll have another year under his belt. It'll be interesting to see how, I mean, this is across the board for everyone, how the season will unfold without having spring practice, and maybe having to have some kind of condensed fall practice, or kind of a mini camp before fall practice, and see. I don't know if we'll necessarily see the exponential development in a lot of these players that you usually can maybe expect from season to season, with how the COVID-19 spread has kind of condensed everything through the summer. But yeah, I mean, he's going to have another big year for A&M to have some success, and have to show some of that growth, even though he did have a pretty successful season last year.
Once again, we're talking to Travis Brown from the Eagle News. Travis, this offensive line last season was spotty at best, very inconsistent, though they had quite a bit of talent there, and most of that talent is coming back. So, my question for you is this, Travis: who should we look at on this line to improve their individual play, and by doing that, will prove the overall play of this offensive line unit?
Uh, a guy to look out for is Kenyon Green. He was a guy as a freshman last year who started. Jimbo Fisher and his staff raved about them. The offensive line was probably the weakest link of the whole team last year because they just really couldn't give Kellen Mondt enough time. They were having a lot of trouble through most of the season opening up running holes for Isaiah Spiller and Jashaun Corbin and any of those guys. And so they were having to start to kind of game plan in spite of the offensive line and towards the end of the season. They don't really bring in anyone new that necessarily could have a direct impact on saying, well, this offensive line is going to be a ton better. But they'll have another season under their belt, whatever that means through this off season. And I would expect that Kenyon Green will show improvement with what he's been able to do, having a year under his belt, not just being a freshman who comes in starting right away. So I would think Kenyon Green. The other interesting point will be who will be the Aggie center. That was another point of problem last year with Colton Prater in and out, not necessarily doing a great job, but center will be another position to look at for the Aggies as well.
Absolutely. And Travis, you made a point earlier that is so true. We are definitely in different times than we are used to because traditionally we see players improve from year to year because of the experiences, the extra practices, all the things that go with an extra year of playing football. But we might not see as much growth, say, at the offensive line this year because there aren't all those spring practices. There aren't all those workouts afterwards that they're used to having because of the coronavirus and everything going on with it. And it really may be we don't see the jump in play that we expect from this offensive line.
Yeah, I mean that's across the board. You have a running back stable with the Aggies that's going to be made up mostly of freshmen, and really the backup is going to be Anais Smith, who spent his entire freshman year last year as a slot receiver. They only moved him to running back for the bowl game last year because they legitimately had no backups due to injuries and transfers and the whatnot. So Anais Smith, while he's a very talented guy and was able to step up just through bowl practice to do a really good job in the backfield, I think he's a guy that a lot of people were wanting to see progressions and steps made, and we'll have to see if those will be able to made and what limited practice time they have, and then just getting those freshman running backs in, getting them into the system and having some more depth at that position that there was absolutely depleted last year. Both that and the offensive line are just position groups that A&M wanted to see growth in, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of growth is made with this very, very strange offseason.
Once again, we're talking to Travis Brown from the Eagle. Now, Travis, I want to move to the other side of the football and look at this defense, a unit that I thought played pretty well last season when you consider the fact that, yes, they gave up 22.5 points per game, but on that schedule was Alabama. On that schedule was Clemson. On that schedule was LSU. And they faced all these teams with a ton of firepower and still came out with a respectable average. I've got to believe that next season, with their schedule being, in my opinion, quite a bit easier, that we could see this defense progress quite a bit. And what do you think the expectations and who are some of the players that should show up and make this defense better next season?
They could be pretty good. I think last year you saw plenty of games where the defense did enough to let A&M stay in the game, and the offense just couldn't find that rhythm to get in the end zone or to get points on the board to give A&M a chance to win it. So I think defense might be one of the stronger suits of this team. The defensive line has guys returning who have experience, like Bobby Brown, like Jaden Peavy. You're going to have to replace the production that Justin Matabuke produced on the defensive line because he's decided he's going to the NFL draft. Linebacking core is going to be strong as well, with both returning Buddy Johnson and Anthony Hines, and two guys who really solidified themselves last year. As has been the case the past couple of years, it's the defensive secondary that's something that you can to keep your eye on. It wasn't necessarily a strong suit of A&M the last two seasons. It improved a little bit last year, but it was A&M's definitely a team that you could pass against. So just seeing what they would be able to do at the cornerback position is going to be a point of interest like it was last year. And then just the outside pass rushing, not necessarily a strong suit of A&M last year. See with a myriad of guys that they return, if someone can kind of separate themselves as that kind of force on the outside, that'll be what to watch for A&M's defense.
Jimbo Fisher arrived at Texas A&M with a ton of fanfare, a former national championship coach, a lot of expectations, a big contract, with a ton of upperclassmen coming back because he really hasn't had a lot over the last couple of years. How much pressure is on Jimbo Fisher to have a big season this year?
I uh, I think that there is a decent amount. I don't know if it's um, of course, it's not any kind of like hot seat pressure or anything, but I think even it has less to do with the classification of the players returning and more to do with the schedule. For as absolutely historically difficult as their schedule was last year, this schedule this year is set up to be one where they could potentially be going into Alabama and LSU the last two games of the season undefeated, with really the only true challenge on paper heading into that being Auburn about midway through the season. But instead of having Clemson as kind of their one preseason challenge, they have Colorado. They're playing a ton of, they have North Texas, Abilene Christian, a bunch of kind of regional schools in Texas on the board other than that. And really with the experience that they're returning, with the skill that they're returning, there is no reason to not expect of this team that they go into Alabama and LSU at the end of the season undefeated, and that those games will then probably have a lot of playoff probabilities and playoff meaning for the playoff, because you'll probably have maybe an undefeated Alabama and an undefeated A&M going up against each other. And with losing Joe Burrow, with losing Dave Aranda, what all the LSU lost, you might have A&M as the favorite in that game at the end of the year. It could be a really special season for A&M just based on what the schedule holds for them, if they can live up to what their potential is player to player across the board.
Absolutely, and I'm expecting a very good season out of the Texas A&M Aggies. And really, as you look over the SEC right now and you try to find, okay, who could be next year's LSU, go from good to really great. And I don't know if there is another one, but if there is, I think it probably is Texas A&M because they've got a lot of key players coming back at key positions. They've got a schedule that lines up very favorable. There's a lot of things there that could line up for a big, big year, which leads me to my next question for you, Travis, and that is, what is a reasonable expectation of how many wins that the Aggies should get next season?
Well, I think on the upper threshold of possibilities, I think you could definitely look at like a 11-1 season, with maybe one loss to Alabama, or maybe they slip up at Auburn. Think that with LSU coming to Kyle Field this year, that gives A&M maybe a little bit of advantage in that, and them trying to replace a lot of key players in key positions. I think if you're looking at the upper threshold, if every player comes out and shows the improvement that's expected, 11-1 or maybe even better might not necessarily be out of the realm of possibilities. But I think that is as if everything goes perfectly. I think I think this is a double-digit win season for A&M. I really think that this is where everything kind of comes together. You have plenty of Jimbo Fisher's players in. You have Kellen Mondt coming back as a senior, fully ingrained in Fisher's offense. You don't really have a ton of holes. I think it really all hinges on the offensive line and how much improvement the offensive line can make to help Kellen Mond be able to do his job, get points on the board. I think your best case scenarios are looking at a double-digit win season. I think anything less than that would probably be pretty disappointing to the average A&M fan down here.
Absolutely. Once again, Travis Brown from the Eagle. Travis, we appreciate so much you taking some time and being with us. And can you just allow our listeners on the radio and our viewers on the Dr. SEC TV network, can you just allow them to know where they can find you at on social media so that they can follow the Aggies throughout the season?
Sure. All the stories are on theeagle.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Travis_L_Brown.
Once again, Travis Brown from the Eagle. Travis, we appreciate it so much and look forward to having you on the show again real soon.
You got it. Thanks.